I thought I was meeting my father at the luxury car dealership to buy him the classic vintage Porsche he had wanted for his retirement. Instead, I caught my husband, who was supposedly drowning in high-stakes design meetings, on a corporate trip to London, wrapping his arms around a 24-year-old junior designer in the showroom lobby. I was ready to shatter the glass walls of the dealership right then and there. But my father, a retired federal judge who spent 30 years dismantling corrupt executives, gripped my arm. He whispered that a public meltdown makes you the crazy wife, but a quiet audit makes you the owner of his life. He told me we were going to teach him a lesson he would never forget. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have had to stand up to a partner who underestimated your worth and intelligence. My name is Elena, I am 35 years old, and I run a successful, discreet corporate restructuring and legal consultancy firm. I handle massive acquisitions, sanitize bankruptcies for multinational conglomerates, and erase the mistakes of billionaires. My business clears over $6 million a year. But if you ask my husband, Victor, he would tell you I have a little freelance consulting hobby that keeps me busy while he does the real work of providing for our family. Victor is 36 and serves as a senior director at a prestigious international architectural firm. From the day we met, he has been obsessed with projecting an image of flawless wealth and untouchable status. He preaches about legacy, ensuring he wears the finest custom Italian suits, drives the newest luxury sedan, and insists we host lavish dinner parties to impress his older colleagues. What he conveniently mentions to his friends, or his judgmental, elitist mother, Beatrice's, that my little hobby is what paid off the mortgage on our 6-bedroom estate in cash. I let him play the king of the castle because I thought it protected his fragile pride. I played the quiet, supportive corporate wife, shrinking my own massive accomplishments so his ego could fill the room. That Thursday afternoon was supposed to be a joyous occasion. I was standing in the immaculate, sunlit showroom of the most exclusive luxury automotive dealership in the city, waiting for my father, Arthur. Arthur is a retired federal judge, a man who can command silence in a crowded courtroom by adjusting his glasses. He built generational wealth and methodically, investing in property, without feeling the need to wear designer labels or brag about his bank accounts. Victor hated that about him. He thought my father lacked ambition, because he lived in the same modest home he bought 35 years ago. Victor understood that true power does not need to shout. The dealership smelled of rich leather and expensive espresso. I checked my phone for the third time in 10 minutes. Victor had texted me that morning, complaining about the brutal rain in London. He told me he was exhausted from back-to-back design pitches, and that he would be stuck in conference rooms analyzing blueprints rooms until late that night. I had even transferred $10,000 from my personal savings into his checking account the previous evening because he claimed his corporate card was compromised and he needed to entertain some high-profile real estate developers. I had smiled at my phone, sent him a supportive text with a heart emoji, and told him to secure the contract. I believed I was supporting a hard-working husband. The heavy glass doors of the showroom parted, and my father walked in. He was smiling widely, his eyes crinkling at the corners. I rushed forward, wrapping my arms around him, inhaling the scent of his familiar cedar aftershave. He hugged me back tightly, but suddenly, the warmth of his embrace vanished. His entire body went rigid, his eyes locked onto something over my right shoulder. It was Victor. He was wearing the custom-tailored charcoal suit I had picked up from the dry cleaners for him on Tuesday. But he was not in London. He was standing right here, thousands of miles away from his supposed corporate battleground. And he was not alone. Standing pressed against his chest was a young woman I recognized. Her name was Serena. She was a 24-year-old junior interior designer at his architectural firm. But what made the blood freeze in my veins was not seeing her with my husband. It was what she was wearing around her neck. She was wearing a specific distinctive diamond pendant necklace. I recognized every facet of the stone and the exact cut of the platinum chain, because I was the one who paid the $15,000 credit card bill for it 3 weeks ago. Now, that same diamond was resting against the collarbone of his 24-year-old junior designer. They were not standing together inspecting a car. Victor had his hands resting low on her waist, pulling her flush against his body. Right there, in the middle of a bustling luxury dealership, he leaned down and kissed her. It was not a brief, friendly greeting. It was a desperate, familiar, lingering kiss. He brushed a strand of dark hair behind her ear, repeating the exact same gentle gesture he used to do to me when we first started dating 12 years ago. He looked at her with a level of adoration and presence that he had not shown me in years. I took a heavy step forward, my fists clenched so my fingernails dug deep into my palms. Before I could take a second step, my father's large hand clamped down on my shoulder. It was an unyielding, grounded weight that stopped me dead in my tracks. I looked back at him. My father leaned in close, his mouth inches from my ear. His voice was devoid of panic. It was the icy, methodical tone of a judge who had spent his life sentencing corrupt executives. "A public scene gives him the power, Elena," my father whispered. "If you march over there and scream, Victor will spin the narrative. He will make you the emotional, irrational, hysterical wife who lost her temper in public. He will use your anger to justify his betrayal to his family and his colleagues." My father tightened his grip on my shoulder. "We do not scream, we audit. A quiet audit makes you the owner of his life. Gather the evidence, secure your assets, and we will teach him a lesson he will never forget." My father was right. Victor believed I was a naive, financially illiterate consultant who existed only to support his grand ambitions. I took a deep, steadying breath and reached into my purse. I pulled out my phone and opened the camera. I zoomed in on the delivery bay. I waited for the exact right moment and snapped a rapid burst of high-resolution photos. I captured the kiss, the diamond necklace, his hands on her waist, and the sales contract resting on the hood of the white sports car. It was undeniable, crystal clear evidence of his infidelity and his financial deception. I checked the images, locked my phone, and slipped it safely back into my bag. I looked at my father, my face a mask of absolute terrifying calm. "Let's go home, Dad," I said. "I have a lot of work to do." I turned my back on my husband and walked out of the dealership, leaving him to his illusion of control. He thought he was getting away with the perfect crime. He did not realize he had handed me the match I was going to use to burn his entire architectural kingdom to the ground. 2 hours later, I sat on the plush velvet sofa in our living room, staring blankly at the vaulted ceiling I had paid to renovate last year. My pulse had steadied, replaced by a cold, calculating rhythm that my father had wired into my DNA. Victor thought he was married to a quiet, compliant consultant who spent her days drafting emails and fetching coffee for local businesses. He had underestimated the woman who buried scandals for international tycoons and sanitized the reputations of massive real estate moguls. I did not manage crises, I engineered outcomes, and right now Victor was the biggest crisis of my life. The heavy oak front door clicked open. I remained still, arranging my features into the soft, adoring expression he demanded. Victor walked in, dropping his leather overnight bag onto the hardwood floor with an exhausted, dramatic sigh. He looked immaculate. His charcoal suit did not have a single wrinkle, and his hair was styled. He shrugged off his coat, the picture of the weary corporate king returning to his castle. He walked over, leaned down, and kissed my cheek. He smelled of expensive Scotch, fresh leather from the dealership, and underneath it all, the faint, lingering scent of vanilla perfume. "Serena's perfume. I am so glad to be home," Victor groaned, rubbing the back of his neck in a theatrical display of fatigue. "London was brutal, Elena. The rain cuts right through your bones. I spent 3 straight days trapped in freezing conference rooms with developers who do not understand the first thing about aggressive modern design." I smiled, a warm, practiced expression that did not reach my eyes. "You work so hard for us, baby," I said, keeping my voice light and supportive. Did you manage to close the deal? He smirked, that arrogant, self-satisfied grin I once found charming. I laid the groundwork. These things take time, especially when you are the only one in the room with the actual vision to restructure a city block. But I handled it. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a small, hastily wrapped box. Oh, I brought you something. He handed it to me, with the flourish of a man bestowing a priceless artifact. I peeled back the cheap paper to reveal a generic glass snow globe featuring the London Eye. The water inside was slightly cloudy, and a tiny sticker on the bottom read, "Made in Taiwan." He had purchased it at an airport gift shop on a previous trip and saved it for this exact alibi. Or perhaps Serena had grabbed it for him while he was busy paying for her sports car. "It is beautiful," I said, setting it on the coffee table. "Thank you for thinking of me while you were so busy networking." He puffed out his chest, pleased with his performance. "A man has to take care of his wife. You hold down the fort with your little consulting hobby. But I need you to know I appreciate you keeping things running here while I secure our actual future." He loosened his tie, already mentally checking out of our conversation. "I am going to take a long, hot shower and wash the transatlantic flight off me. We can talk about tightening the household budget over dinner. My firm is dealing with some cash flow issues, and we need to be smart right now." I nodded, playing the beautiful, obedient wife perfectly. "Take your time," I told him. "I will order some dinner," as he walked up the sweeping staircase. The illusion of his perfect lie trailed behind him. I waited until I heard the heavy master bathroom door click shut, and the sound of the rainfall shower turn on. Then I stood up, my crisis management instincts kicked into high gear. Victor had left his phone and his encrypted tablet resting on the marble kitchen island. I walked over, my footsteps silent. I did not need to guess his passcodes. Victor was far too vain to use anything other than the date of his first major architectural award. I tapped the numbers into his phone first, the screen illuminated instantly, right on cue. A text message banner dropped down from the top of the screen. The sender was saved as Design Team Alpha, but the message had nothing to do with blueprints. "Babe, the dealership says the title transfer for the car will take 48 hours. I cannot believe we have to go back to reality tomorrow." The test drive was everything. A test drive, not London, not freezing conference rooms. Buying a sports car with his 24-year-old junior designer. I took a sharp breath, memorizing the message, but I did not touch the phone further. I knew better than to leave a read receipt. Instead, I picked up his tablet. My father had taught me that infidelity is the symptom, but the money trail is the actual disease. If Victor was brazen enough to buy his mistress a luxury vehicle while lecturing me about household budgets, he was hiding something much larger. I opened his banking application. We maintained a joint savings account that I had seeded with $200,000 of my own money 2 years ago. The balance was $812. I stared at the glowing numbers, my mind struggling to process the visual evidence of my own financial violation. $200,000 was gone, evaporated, drained. A cold, sharp wave of fury washed over me. The betrayal of the affair was painful, but the theft of my money was in declaration of war. Victor had not disrespected our marriage vows. He had reached into my pocket and stolen the financial security I had painstakingly built. I tapped the recent transactions tab, my eyes scanning the ledger for where the funds had disappeared to. It was not a series of small, unnoticeable withdrawals. It was a single, massive wire transfer initiated 4 days ago, right before he supposedly left for London. The description read, "Wire transfer to Aurelia Design Studio LLC." I had heard of Aurelia Design Studio. Victor worked for a massive corporate architectural conglomerate, not a boutique studio. The audacity of the theft left me breathless. He had taken my money, the money I had earned, managing corporate disasters, and funneled it into a black hole while looking me in the eye and telling me we needed to tighten our budget. He thought I was blind. He thought I was so focused on being a supportive wife that I would question his authority or check the accounts. While the shower water continued to run upstairs, My own phone vibrated in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was a text message from my father. My dad did not send words or emotional platitudes. He was a man of the law, of numbers, and of swift, decisive action. The message was short and devastatingly clear. Operation Restructure begins. Check the wire routing. I looked from my phone to the tablet screen, staring at the name Aurelia Design Studio LLC. The pieces of the puzzle were clicking together in my mind. Victor was not having a casual fling, he was actively financing a parallel life using my resources. He was attempting to build his own empire, using the bricks from my house. I used my phone to take high-resolution photos of the tablet screen, capturing the empty account balance, the wire transfer confirmation number, and the LLC name. I needed undeniable proof, the kind of evidence that would hold up in a deposition, or better yet, a boardroom. Once I had everything documented, I closed out the banking application, cleared the background apps, and set the tablet down in the exact position and angle Victor had left it. I walked back into the living room and sat down on the velvet sofa, picking up the cheap snow globe from the coffee table. I shook it, watching the artificial snow swirl around the miniature plastic London skyline. Victor was upstairs washing off the scent of another woman, believing he had successfully pulled off the ultimate deception. He believed he was the architect of our reality, the brilliant executive outsmarting his simple, obedient wife. He had no idea that he had handed a corporate restructuring expert the exact tools she needed to dismantle his entire existence. I set the snow globe back down, the plastic flakes settling to the bottom. I did not feel like crying, the shock had burned away, leaving nothing but a ruthless, diamond-hard focus. I picked up my phone and drafted a quick reply to my father. Wire located, pull the LLC records. I want to know who owns it by tomorrow morning. I hit send, took a deep breath, and prepared to cook dinner for a dead man walking. I stood at the marble island, preparing a fresh pot of artisanal pour-over coffee, the way Victor liked it. He sat on the opposite side of the counter, dressed in a flawless navy suit, checking his expensive watch. He looked like the picture of corporate success. He looked like a man who had not stolen $200,000 from his wife to fund his mistress. I handed him his mug. He took a sip and let out a long, heavy sigh that I recognized as the opening note of one of his financial lectures. He set the mug down and folded his hands together. Elena, we need to have a serious conversation about capital allocation this morning. He began, his voice dripping with that unbearable corporate condescension he loved to use on me. The commercial real estate market is volatile right now. My firm is dealing with some severe cash flow issues, and as a senior director, it falls on me to steer the ship. Because of these budget constraints, we need to tighten the belt at home. I kept my face smooth. I leaned against the counter and asked him what kind of tightening he meant. He gestured vaguely around our custom-designed kitchen. The discretionary spending, he said smoothly. I need you to cut back on the luxury purchases for a while. We have an image of legacy and prestige to maintain in this community, and I cannot be stressed about our household budget while I am fighting corporate battles. I know you enjoy your little consulting hobby, but let us be honest here. Your freelance work is not pulling its weight. I am the one carrying the mortgage. I am the provider. I need a wife who understands corporate sacrifice and knows how to manage a budget. The audacity of his words almost made me laugh out loud. He was sitting in a house that my restructuring firm had paid off 3 years ago. He was lecturing me about discretionary, spending less than 24 hours after I watched him buy a sports car for a 24-year-old girl. He was telling me to manage a budget while he was draining our accounts. But my father had given me my marching orders. A quiet audit makes you the owner of his life. I looked down at my hands and forced a look of submission onto my face. You are right, baby, I said, keeping my voice soft and compliant. I have been so focused on my little client roster that I have not been paying attention to the bigger picture. I will transfer whatever you need from my personal savings to help smooth things out for you. Whatever you think is best for our future, Victor smiled, his chest visibly puffing out with pride. He loved nothing more than feeling superior to me. He stood up, walked around the island, and kissed my forehead. "That is my girl," he murmured. "Trust my financial leadership, Elena. I am the king of this castle. I will protect what is ours." He grabbed his leather briefcase and headed for the garage. I stood still, listening to the heavy thud of the door closing and the low hum of his luxury sedan backing out of the driveway. The moment the sound of his engine faded down the street, the submissive wife routine vanished. I took his half-empty coffee mug and dropped it directly into the trash can. He paced like a caged animal, his jaw locked in a hard line. He had been protective of me, and knowing what Victor had done was pushing him to the edge of violence. "He is not dealing with budget cuts, Elena," Leo growled, slamming a massive manila file down onto the marble island. "I pulled these records at 6 this morning. The second Dad told me about that shell company." Leo pointed a calloused finger at the monthly rental rate. "Look at the numbers," he demanded. "He is leasing a luxury design studio space?" I asked, my mind struggling to process the scale of the financial commitment. "Is he moving his architectural division?" Leo let out a harsh, bitter laugh. "No, sis, look at the lessee name." I looked at the top of the contract. The space was not leased to Victor's architectural firm. It was leased to Aurelia Design Studio LLC, the exact same shell corporation my father had tracked the stolen $200,000 to last night. Victor was using the money he stole from my savings to pay the upfront deposit and the first 6 months of rent for a luxury studio for Serena. He was building his mistress a fake empire using my money. Leo slammed his hand against the counter, causing the granite to shake. "I am going to his office right now," Leo snarled. "I am going to drag him out of that building by his custom tie and beat him until he forgets his own name. He thinks he can steal from my sister." "No," I said sharply, holding up my hand to stop him. "Do not touch him, Leo. If you hit him, you give him the victim narrative, you give him an excuse to call the police and tie us up in court. We are going to destroy him on paper, where he cannot fight back." "Elena, it gets much worse," Leo warned, crossing his arms. "You need to look at the last page of that lease." I flipped through the thick stack of legal jargon until I reached the final signature pages. There was a section titled, "Personal Guarantor." In commercial real estate, a personal guarantor is required when a new LLC does not have the credit history to secure a luxury lease on its own. The guarantor pledges their own personal assets to cover the debt if the LLC defaults. Victor had listed our marital estate as the collateral for the $25,000 a month lease. The estate that I had paid off in full, the estate that represented my hard work, my safety, and my future. He had pledged the equity of my house to guarantee a workspace for his mistress. Commercial leases of this magnitude require both spouses to sign if the property being used as collateral is a marital asset. Right there on the bottom line, next to Victor's signature, was my name. "He forged my signature," I whispered, the reality of his sociopathic behavior sinking in. "He forged my name on a legally binding financial document. If Serena misses a payment, or if this fake design studio goes under, the building management company has the legal right to place a lien on my house." Leo nodded, his eyes dark with fury. "The leasing agent told me Victor brought the paperwork into their office yesterday afternoon. Already signed." Victor told the agent that his wife was too busy managing her little home business to come down in person, but that you were thrilled to support his new venture. "He is trying to bankrupt me," I realized, the truth hitting me with crystal clarity. This was not about hiding an affair. Victor resented my financial independence. He hated that my business was successful. He hated that I had paid off the house, because it meant he could control me. By draining my savings and legally tying my property to a massive commercial debt, he was actively engineering my financial ruin. He wanted to trap me in a corner where I would have no choice but to rely on him as the provider. "This is felony fraud, Elena," Leo said. "We can call the police right now and have him arrested for forgery." I looked down at the forged signature, my mind working 10 steps ahead. "No," I said, picking up the lease agreement. "The police will arrest him, that is too easy." If I send him to jail now, he gets to play the martyr. He gets to tell his mother and his friends that his wife locked him up over a misunderstanding. I am not going to send him to jail. I am going to make him lose everything he values first. I am going to strip away his job, his reputation, his money, and his mistress. Then, when he is standing in the rubble of his own arrogance, we will drop the legal hammer on him. Leo smiled, a sharp, dangerous smile. So what is the next move, boss? I closed the file and looked at my brother. Victor wants to play corporate Monopoly. Let's show him how the board works. Tell Dad I need him to start drafting a forensic audit presentation. We are going to track every single dime Victor has touched. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, hours before his usual arrival time, the heavy oak front door swung open. The sudden thud of his leather Oxfords against the floorboards signaled a massive shift in his usual arrogant rhythm. His steps were hurried, frantic, and heavier than normal. I stayed positioned at the kitchen island, casually flipping through a lifestyle magazine, staging the scene of an unbothered suburban wife. Victor marched into the kitchen, skipping his usual performances of the weary returning king. He did not kiss my cheek, he did not ask about my day, he bypassed the refrigerator and threw a thick, stapled stack of legal documents onto the marble counter, directly in front of me. The papers hit the stone with a loud authoritative slap. I looked up from my magazine, keeping my expression blank, innocent. "You are home early, baby," I said, infusing my voice with the right amount of pleasant surprise. "Is everything all right at the firm?" "Everything is fine," he snapped, though the slight sheen of sweat on his forehead and the rigid tension in his shoulders told a different story. "In fact, things are moving much faster than anticipated. I need you to sign these right now." He tapped his index finger against the top page of the stack. I looked down. The bold, capitalized letters across the header of the document read, "Home Equity Line of Credit Agreement." I felt a freezing chill slide down my spine, but I forced my facial muscles to remain relaxed, constructing a mask of mild, wifely confusion. "A home equity line?" I asked, tilting my head slightly. "Victor, why are we taking out a second mortgage on the estate? We paid this property off 3 years ago, so we would have to worry about debt." His posture shifted from panicked executive to condescending patriarch. "This is why I handle the finances, Elena," he said, his tone dripping with patronizing patience. "You do not understand corporate leverage. You look at a paid-off house and see a cozy place to sleep. I look at a paid-off house and see dead, unutilized capital. I have an emergency corporate investment opportunity. It is a once-in-a-lifetime acquisition play that requires immediate, massive liquid capital. If we pull the equity from this house now, I can triple our net worth in 6 months. I need you to sign on the bottom line so the bank can release the funds by Friday." I stared at him, marveling at the psychological violence of his lie. He was not making a corporate acquisition, he was looking me in the eye and asking me to finance his infidelity. When I hesitated, letting the silence stretch a second too long, his practiced patience evaporated. He leaned across the marble island, invading my personal space, attempting to use his physical size to intimidate me into compliance. "I am out here fighting tooth and nail in these boardrooms to build an empire for our family, and you are hesitating over basic financial strategy," Victor spat. "Your little consulting hobby does not pay the kind of bills I am talking about. I need a partner who supports my vision, not a roadblock who cowers at the word debt. I am the king of this castle, Elena. You need to trust the provider." He was trying to legally bind me to his impending bankruptcy. If I signed those documents with a standard pen, the bank would hand him hundreds of thousands of dollars against the value of my home. He would funnel every single cent of it straight to Serena's LLC. When the money inevitably ran out and he defaulted on the payments, the bank would foreclose on the property I had worked tirelessly to secure. I looked at his expectant, arrogant face. I saw the desperate, clawing panic hiding behind his eyes. He needed this money to keep Serena impressed. I did not argue. I did not point out that my little hobby had paid for every single brick in the castle. He claimed to rule. I dropped my shoulders, lowered my gaze, and gave him a soft, defeated nod. You are right, I murmured, playing the chastised, obedient wife to perfection. I am sorry, Victor. I know you understand these high-level investments far better than I do. I should not have questioned your leadership. I trust you completely. The tension drained from his body in an instant. A smug, victorious smile spread across his face as he smoothed his tie, thoroughly satisfied that he had successfully manipulated his naive wife. He tapped the signature line on the document, "Sign right here, and I will handle the rest with the bank." I turned around and walked over to my leather work tote, resting on the entryway table. I reached into the hidden side pocket, bypassing my standard ballpoint pens, and retrieved a specific, sleek black fountain pen. It was a specialized tool my crisis management firm utilized for drafting sensitive, physical mock-ups of celebrity apology statements before they were legally finalized. The ink flowed beautifully, thick and dark, but it possessed a unique, engineered chemical composition. Within 48 hours of exposure to the air, the ink evaporated, leaving the paper and permanently blank. I looked up at my husband, flashing him a bright, adoring smile as I pressed the specialized nib to the signature line. Whatever you need, honey. The 48-hour countdown on the specialized disappearing ink was ticking away. But my Sunday morning started with the loud, abrasive ringing of my doorbell. It was 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Victor had spent the entire weekend walking around our home, with an inflated sense of triumph, convinced he had successfully manipulated me into mortgaging my own sanctuary, to finance his mistress. I opened the heavy oak front door to find my mother-in-law, Beatrice. She marched past me without a word of greeting, carrying a foil-covered casserole dish like a golden trophy. She was wearing a brightly colored silk kaftan that was inappropriate for a casual backyard lunch. Her wrists stacked with heavy gold bangles that clinked loudly with every movement. I followed her through the house and out onto the expansive cedar deck. Victor was standing by the stainless steel outdoor grill, holding a pair of tongs like a royal scepter. Beatrice bypassed me, wrapping her arms around his neck and planting a loud, exaggerated kiss on his cheek. "My beautiful boy," Beatrice announced, her voice booming across the patio so the neighbors could hear. "Look at you, working 60 hours a week in those high-stress corporate boardrooms, and you still make time to cook a feast for your family. That is what a real man does. You stop providing." Beatrice took her usual seat on the woven rattan patio chair, tossing her designer bag onto the polished teak table. She flagged me down with a snap of her fingers. "Elena, grab us some sparkling water," she ordered, not bothering to make eye contact. I walked to the outdoor kitchenette, my expression neutral, locking my crisis management armor into place. I served the drinks. "It is a good thing Victor makes the kind of money he does," Beatrice said, speaking loudly enough for everyone on the deck to hear. "Because keeping up a house this size is no small feat, especially when the wife does not have a real career to fall back on." I sat down on the edge of a love seat, crossing my legs elegantly. "I am doing quite well with my consulting clients, Beatrice," I said, keeping my tone mild and unbothered. Beatrice scoffed. "Consulting, an unstable freelance career, is not a real job, Elena. You sit at a kitchen island playing on your laptop, while my son secures multi-million-dollar acquisitions. You are playing a dangerous game. What happens if those little local businesses decide they do not need your PR advice anymore? You would be dependent on Victor's salary. You need to be thinking about stability." I looked over at Victor. He was flipping the stakes, a smug, satisfied smile playing at the corners of his mouth. He did not say a single word to defend me. He was currently bankrupt, relying on a forged signature to extract equity from a house he did not own. And yet he stood there, letting his mother lecture me about financial dependence. "It is a blessing." Victor stepped up to take the reins of this household, Beatrice sneered, her voice dropping into a harsh, lecturing register. "A man with his prestige needs a woman who knows her place, not one playing pretend on a laptop." The sheer, staggering weight of her delusion was almost suffocating. Beatrice was sitting on a $3,000 imported rattan patio set that my money had paid for. She was lecturing me about generational wealth in a suburban estate that my crisis management firm had paid off in full 36 months ago. Victor was not carrying the family on his back, he was a parasite, actively bleeding us dry to fund a luxury design studio for a 24-year-old assistant. I did not scream. I stood up, picked up a set of silver serving tongs, and selected the thickest, most glazed steak from the platter. I placed it onto a porcelain plate and handed it directly to my mother-in-law. I looked her right in the eyes, my expression a mask of absolute, unbothered serenity. "You are right, Beatrice," I smiled, keeping my voice sweet as honey. "A man's true prestige reveals itself in the end. I am grateful for everything Victor has set in motion this weekend." Victor was pacing the length of our master bedroom, holding his phone to his ear, speaking in hushed, urgent tones that he ended the moment I walked through the door. "Elena," he began, his voice dripping with faux regret. "The board of directors upended my week. They are demanding I fly down to Miami tomorrow morning." I paused by the mahogany dresser. "Miami?" I asked softly. "I thought the London trip was supposed to be the end of your travel for the quarter." "You got back, baby. I am exhausted," he agreed, shaking his head. "But that is the burden of leadership. The senior partners want to do some intensive, high-level team building and strategy mapping before the next fiscal quarter. We are going to be trapped in hotel conference rooms from dawn until dusk hashing out architectural logistics." He was looking his wife dead in the eye, weaponizing his supposed financial responsibilities to justify a romantic vacation with his mistress. "You sacrifice so much for our family," I murmured, keeping my tone compliant. "Do you want me to pack your bags so you can get some rest tonight?" "You are a lifesaver, Elena." The essentials, light fabrics, Thursday morning arrived with a frantic, rushed energy. Victor grabbed the overnight bag I had so packed and headed for the front door. "I will call you from the hotel," he said, already looking past me. "Keep the house secure, Elena. And please remember what we talked about regarding the budget." The moment his luxury sedan vanished around the corner, my phone vibrated violently. It was a text message from Leo. The message contained a single high-resolution photograph, followed by a block of text. I tapped the screen, opening the image. Victor was standing on the sunlit tarmac of the private municipal airport located outside the city limits. Standing right beside him, her arm looped intimately through his, was Serena. They were standing at the foot of the boarding stairs of a massive, gleaming Gulfstream private jet. I zoomed in on the aircraft, my blood running cold. The sleek dark blue tail of the jet featured a specific, custom-designed geometric logo. It was a logo I recognized, because my firm had spent 3 weeks restructuring its parent company last year. The jet belonged to Sterling, a billionaire real estate mogul, and more importantly, the most lucrative, volatile client on my entire roster. My pulse began to hammer a frantic rhythm against my throat as I read the text message Leo had sent beneath the photograph. "The private jet belongs to your top client." I pulled the flight authorization logs. "Elena. He didn't book a charter. They billed the entire round-trip flight directly to your corporate account." I stared at the glowing screen, the sheer staggering magnitude of his crime locking the air in my lungs. Victor had somehow accessed my secure home office, stolen my classified corporate routing numbers, and fraudulently authorized a private charter using my firm's direct billing account. He was embezzling from a restructuring agency that managed the reputations of billionaires. He was leaving a massive, glaring paper trail linking my professional business directly to his fraudulent, adulterous vacation. I lowered the phone, the cold, calculating crisis manager taking over. The shocked, betrayed wife was dead. She had been buried the moment I saw that tail number. I walked straight past the kitchen, bypassing the coffee maker, and headed directly down the hallway toward my secure home office. I sat down at my massive glass desk and opened my encrypted laptop. Victor had taken his fantasy too far. He had dragged my business into his mess, and in my world, corporate threats were neutralized with extreme prejudice. I picked up my phone and dialed my father's secure line. It was time to stop gathering evidence and start executing the demolition. Victor dragged his leather overnight bag through the front door late Sunday evening, dropping it onto the foyer floor with a heavy, dramatic thud. He looked remarkably tanned for a man who claimed to have spent 4 consecutive days locked inside a fluorescent-lit hotel conference room, analyzing architectural logistics. He smelled faintly of sea salt, expensive coconut oil, and a fruity cocktail. The moment he saw me standing in the hallway, his entire physical demeanor shifted. He dropped his head, let out a long, ragged sigh, and rubbed the back of his neck as if he were carrying the weight of the entire global economy on his shoulders. "You have no idea the mental toll a retreat like this takes on a man, Elena," he groaned, shrugging off his custom blazer and tossing it over the banister. He walked into the living room and collapsed onto the leather sofa. I was in back-to-back strategy seminars from 8 in the morning until 9 at night. The board of directors had us isolated. I am and drained. I walked over to the sofa, my expression arranged into a mask of wifely concern. I handed him a glass of iced water. I had spent my weekend orchestrating a hostile corporate takeover of his employer, purchasing the crippling debt of his architectural firm through a insulated proxy investment group. I was now, unbeknownst to him, the majority stakeholder of his professional existence. He was a low-level executive, dancing on a stage that I owned, and he was sitting in my living room, expecting a medal for cheating on me. "You work so hard for this family, Victor," I murmured, keeping my voice gentle and soothing. "You must be exhausted." Victor moved to the kitchen island and poured himself a generous measure of scotch. He took a sip and set the glass down on the marble counter, leaning forward, resting his elbows on the surface. "Listen, Elena," he began, using his authoritative boardroom voice. "We need to talk about this coming Friday. The firm is hosting the annual Architectural Awards banquet downtown. It is going to be the most critical networking event of my entire career." I tilted my head, feigning mild excitement. "Oh, the annual banquet. Should I call the dry cleaners tomorrow and have my black evening dress pressed?" "Actually, you are not going to need a dress this year. The board of directors has restructured the format of the event. It is not a social gathering anymore. They have limited the guest list. It is board members, senior executives, and key investors only. Plus ones are prohibited. They want us laser-focused on high-level acquisitions and market dominance, not making small talk with spouses over appetizers." I knew what he was doing. The annual banquet had restricted spouses. It was a massive, ostentatious display of corporate wealth designed to show off the partners and their glamorous wives. He was going to parade his 24-year-old mistress around his colleagues, likely introducing her as his brilliant new corporate design consultant, integrating her into his professional ecosystem, using the money he had attempted to steal from our home equity line. "That is such a shame," I said, allowing my voice to drop in manufactured disappointment. "Are you sure spouses are not allowed?" Victor let out a long, heavy sigh, looking at me with deep theatrical pity. "Elena, you have to understand the environment I operate in. These are vicious, shark-infested corporate waters. The people in that room control billions of dollars in real estate development. Even if spouses were technically allowed, you would be miserable. You would not fit in with the corporate elite. I need to be in the trenches networking with the new majority stakeholders. Rumor has it a massive silent investment group bought out our debt, and their representatives are going to be at the banquet. I have to make a flawless, unmatched impression. I cannot be distracted by trying to explain corporate logistics to you all night." He walked around the island and pulled me into a brief, rigid hug, patting my back as if a disappointed child. "It is for the best, Elena. You stay here, order some takeout and relax in the quiet. I cannot have you playing pretend in a room full of apex predators." I delivered the exact performance he required to maintain his false sense of security. I nodded, kissing his cheek. "Have a great time, baby. I will stay here and catch up on my little hobby." I waited until I heard the heavy master bedroom door click shut. I walked straight to the back of the walk-in closet, unzipping a heavy, opaque black canvas garment bag hanging in the shadows. I pulled a custom-tailored designer gown out of my hidden garment bag. The ballroom of the Grand Regent Hotel was a masterclass in corporate intimidation. Victor navigated the crowded room with the arrogant, entitled swagger of a man who believed he had already conquered the world. Serena was wearing a floor-length, shimmering silver gown that plunged dangerously low, a dress that had undoubtedly been charged to the same corporate account Victor had used to charter the private jet to Miami. Victor stopped near the center of the room, intercepting a group of senior vice presidents. "I want you all to meet Serena," Victor announced, his voice booming with forced authority. "She is the founder of Aurelia Design Studio and my indispensable partner in my latest ventures." Serena offered a demure, rehearsed smile. In this room, men paraded young, beautiful women as trophies of their success, indifferent to the wives waiting for them at home. He was operating on a delusional timeline. He believed with certainty that the forged home equity documents I had signed with disappearing ink were currently clearing the bank's final approval stages. He believed he was days away from a massive influx of cash. Combined with the $200,000 he had already funneled into Serena's shell company, he was convinced he possessed the liquid capital necessary to achieve his ultimate goal. He was going to buy a junior partnership stake in the architectural firm tonight. Victor spotted Harrison, the chief executive officer of the firm, standing near the private bar. He was also a man whose public image had been salvaged and sanitized by my restructuring agency. Harrison owed me his professional life. "Harris, good to see you. The event looks spectacular." Harrison turned around, swirling a glass of scotch. His eyes darted to Serena, then back to Victor. His expression was unreadable, a blank, calculating mask. "Victor," he said, his voice dangerously neutral, "you are looking confident for a man in the middle of a third-quarter restructuring phase. I see you brought a guest, despite the strict internal attendance policy. I trust Elena is doing well at home." Victor waved his hand dismissively, missing the sharp edge in the CEO's tone. "Elena is fine, she's resting." "You know how it is, Harrison. The high-level corporate environment is a bit too fast-paced for her. Speaking of which, I have everything prepared for the junior partnership buy-in. My capital is liquid, and I am ready to sign the letters of intent tonight." Harrison took a slow, deliberate sip of his scotch. He looked at Victor with the quiet, terrifying pity of a butcher looking at a confident sheep. "Is that right?" Harrison murmured. "Well, you should know that the board of directors no longer controls the partnership buy-ins. As of yesterday afternoon, a private proxy investment group bought out our entire corporate debt. They are our new majority stakeholders. Every executive decision, every partnership, and every logistical contract flows directly through them now." Victor's eyes lit up with predatory excitement. He smelled blood in the water. "That is why I am here," Victor said, straightening his velvet lapels. "I heard the representative for the new majority stakeholder is attending the banquet tonight. I'm going to find him, pitch my portfolio, and leverage my capital." Harrison offered a thin, humorless smile. "Oh, the majority stakeholder is arriving tonight. I am sure your presentation will be unforgettable." While Victor was busy digging his own professional grave under the crystal chandeliers, a sleek armored black SUV glided to a smooth stop right outside the grand entrance of the hotel. My father stepped out of the front passenger seat, carrying his reinforced, impact-resistant briefcase. The financial trap was armed. He had spent the last 48 hours dismantling Victor's entire digital existence. The bank had rejected the blank home equity documents. The transfer to Serena's LLC had been seized and frozen under suspicion of marital fraud. Aurelia Design Studio was bankrupt, and the $25,000 studio lease was in active default. I stepped out of the vehicle last. I was not wearing my usual modest suburban linen. I was wearing a custom-tailored, plunging midnight blue designer gown that clung to every curve, radiating pure, unadulterated power. I was not Elena, the supportive spouse, anymore. I was the apex predator my husband had arrogantly claimed to be. At the end of the corridor, a thick velvet rope blocked the entrance, guarded by a team of built security personnel in dark suits. As we approached the velvet rope, the head of security stepped forward. "Excuse me, ma'am," the security chief said. "This is a closed corporate event. We are on a strict pre-approved guest list only." Before I could even speak, a woman in a sharp, tailored pantsuit rushed out from the ballroom doors. It was Sarah, the hotel's senior director of events. 2 years ago, my crisis management firm had saved this hotel from total financial ruin. Sarah owed her current title directly to my intervention. Sarah pushed past the security chief, physically shoving his arm down. "Stand down, Marcus," she hissed. "Do not ask for her credentials. She does not need to be on the guest list. She owns the holding company that bought out the firm. She owns this and—" I locked my eyes on the center of the room, right where my husband was standing with his hand, resting on the waist of his mistress, loudly bragging about his corporate superiority. It was time to show Victor what a woman playing pretend on her laptop could accomplish. I kept my chin level, my posture demanding attention. In a room filled with apex predators, a shift in the food chain is sensed immediately. It took 42 seconds for Victor to notice the severe shift in the room's energy. He turned his head, annoyed by the sudden distraction, his eyes scanning the crowd to see who dared interrupt his spotlight. Our eyes locked across 30 feet of polished marble. The physical transformation of my husband was immediate and catastrophic. The arrogant, relaxed swagger evaporated from his frame. The blood drained from his face, so his skin took on a sickening ashen pallor. His jaw went slack, panic overrode his professional decorum. He dropped his hand from Serena's waist, shoving his indispensable partner aside as he lunged forward. He needed to intercept me before I reached the inner circle of executives, before I could shatter the illusion he had spent months building. Victor closed the distance, cutting me off, near a towering, expensive floral arrangement. He did not care that my father and Leo were standing right there, staring at him with undisguised contempt. His reality was collapsing, and his only instinct was to reassert his dominance. "Are you insane?" he hissed, his voice a ragged, desperate whisper that vibrated with pure panic. "You are embarrassing me." He leaned in closer, his breath smelling of scotch and fear, misreading the entire situation. He believed I was there acting out of a jealous, emotional rage. "I told you to stay home, Elena. You do not belong here. You do not understand this world. I am 10 minutes away from signing a junior partnership agreement using the capital from the house. You are going to ruin my legacy." Victor looked back at me, a flash of smug, desperate triumph returning to his eyes. He thought he had won. He thought he could summon the hired muscle to erase his problems. Before the security guard could even reach for my shoulder, Leo stepped and into the space between us. It was the highest-tier corporate credential, bearing the embossed insignia of the private holding company that had bought out the architectural firm's debt 48 hours ago. "Stand down," Leo ordered, his voice slicing through the tense air like a razor blade. He flashed the badge directly in the security guard's face. The guard stopped dead in his tracks, his eyes widening in instant, terrified recognition of the corporate seal. He took 3 large, rapid steps backward, lowering his hands and nodding respectfully. Victor stared at the black badge, his brain short-circuiting. The absolute, unadulterated terror flooding his pupils was the most beautiful thing I had seen. I looked Victor dead in the eyes, letting him see the cold, calculating apex predator he had unknowingly unleashed. I flexed my shoulder and smoothly yanked my arm out of his grip. "I am not here for you, Victor," I said, my voice echoing with absolute, unquestionable authority. "I am here for the board meeting." Harrison, the chief executive officer of the architectural firm, stood behind the lucite podium. He looked up as the crowd parted before me. 2 years ago, I had sat across from him in his private executive suite, ruthlessly restructuring his public image to save him from an embezzlement scandal. He knew what I was capable of achieving. I walked up the short flight of velvet-carpeted stairs. I reached the podium and turned to face the ballroom. My father stepped forward, popped the latches on his briefcase, and extracted a sleek, titanium-encased flash drive. He placed it into my palm. I plugged the encrypted drive directly into the master control laptop resting on the podium shelf. I hit the execute key. The massive projector screens above me flared to life, casting a stark, blinding white light over the darkened ballroom. Instead of the anticipated corporate logo and third-quarter earnings report, the screens displayed a brilliantly high-definition, organized forensic audit. A collective, sharp intake of breath echoed through the grand ballroom. I pressed a button on the podium console, advancing to the first slide. The screen filled with a detailed, undeniable routing graphic. It tracked the exact flow of $200,000 siphoned directly from our joint accounts over the past month. The name of the company flashed on the screen in massive red letters. Aurelia Design Studio LLC. I had overlaid the original document with my forged signature right next to the time-lapsed photographs of the home equity documents, showing the chemically engineered disappearing ink slowly evaporating from the page. I was painting a masterpiece of complete destruction, ensuring that Victor would secure a loan, sign a contract, or step foot in a boardroom again. The screens filled with the unredacted, classified flight logs from Sterling's private jet charter service. I included the itemized billing receipts for a luxury beachfront penthouse and excessive room service charges, charged directly to my corporate restructuring account. The sound in the room was visceral, a wave of shock and revulsion crashing through the ballroom. The financial elite were staring at a level of brazen, idiotic theft that defied logical comprehension. The color vanished from her face. She did not make it 5 steps. He planted himself directly in front of the service exit doors, crossing his arms over his chest, looking down at Serena with an expression of absolute, terrifying calm. Victor was rushing the stage, physically shoving past 2 junior executives. He was sweating profusely through his expensive velvet tuxedo. "Harrison, you have to listen to me," Victor begged, pointing a shaking finger directly at me. "Do not look at those screens. None of that is real. It is a complete fabrication. That is my wife up there. She is a hysterical, jealous, unbalanced woman. She hacked the hotel's systems because she is obsessed with ruining my night." Harrison did not move. He stood behind the Lucite podium and stared down at Victor. The look on the CEO's face was one of pure, unadulterated disgust. Harrison slowly reached out and adjusted the gooseneck microphone. "You do not seem to understand the gravity of your situation, Victor," Harrison said. His voice amplified through the massive sound system. "And you have no idea who you are married to, Harrison. Listen to me," Victor sputtered. "She is a freelancer. She's projecting fake documents. She does not know anything about corporate finance or acquisitions." "Shut your mouth," Harrison commanded. The authoritative force of the 3 words echoed like a gunshot. Victor's jaw snapped shut. "2 years ago," Harrison continued, his gaze sweeping the ballroom, "this firm faced a public relations and financial crisis. The woman you are currently pointing at, the woman you called a hysterical, jealous wife, stepped into my private office and saved my entire legacy. Her restructuring agency does not handle small-time suburban drama. She handles billionaires and multinational conglomerates. She restructured our public narrative and pulled this firm back from the brink of total annihilation." Victor physically recoiled. He shook his head in a series of short, jerky movements. The dark velvet of his custom tuxedos was soaked through with nervous sweat. "But she is not my crisis manager," Harrison stated, enunciating every single syllable with precision. "On Tuesday afternoon, her private holding company executed a complete hostile buyout of our corporate debt. She is the new majority stakeholder you were so desperate to impress tonight. You aren't embezzling from your wife, Victor. You're trying to steal from your new boss." He caught himself on his hands, gasping for air like a drowning man. He looked up at the massive projection screen, He saw the highlighted wire transfers, the unredacted flight logs, and Serena's name stamped in bold red ink. Then he turned his head and looked at me. "Elena," he choked out, his voice a pathetic, broken wheeze. "Elena, please, this is a misunderstanding. We can fix this. I am your husband, we are family. I was trying to secure our legacy. We were a family when it was convenient for you, Victor," I said, my voice carrying through the silent ballroom. "We were a family when you wanted a quiet, compliant audience for your delusional rants about corporate dominance. But we were apparently not a family when you were spending my money on a 24-year-old assistant. Your indispensable partner looks a little pale over there. You should probably go comfort her. I imagine the federal investigators are going to have a lot of difficult questions for both of you regarding those fabricated commercial lease agreements." Victor let out a sound that was half sob, half groan. "Please, I will pay it back. I will sell my car. Do not take my career. You took your own career," I replied, my voice turning to ice. I looked past him, directing my attention back to the stage. "Harrison, as the majority stakeholder, I am authorizing the immediate termination of the senior director effective as of this exact second. I also expect a full criminal referral to be drafted and filed with the local authorities regarding the embezzled funds before the close of business on Monday morning." "Consider it done, ma'am," Harrison nodded respectfully. "Security will detain him in the holding office until the authorities arrive." 2 hotel security guards marched down the center aisle. He was dead weight. Before I could issue the final order, a sharp, vibrating buzz emanated from my silver clutch. I pulled out my phone. The illuminated screen flashed Beatrice's name. My mother-in-law had been monitoring Victor's location tracking, or one of the junior executives in the room had already texted the unfolding scandal to the outside world. I pressed the green accept button. "What have you done to my son?" Beatrice screamed through the receiver, her voice so loud and shrill that Leo could hear every single word. "I am getting frantic messages. You are a vindictive, hysterical woman. You are destroying our entire family because you are jealous of his success." "Beatrice," I interrupted cleanly, "your son ruined his own life. I provided the projector screen. How dare you speak to me that way?" She shrieked. "He is the provider of this family. He carries all of us on his back." I smiled, a cold, genuine expression of pure liberation. "Oh, and by the way, Beatrice," I said, making sure my enunciation was flawless. "That monthly $3,000 allowance Victor supposedly sent you to keep your house afloat. That money came from him. His entire salary covered his custom suits and his leased cars. I set up that blind trust from my private consulting account to keep the peace because he begged me to save his pride." The silence on the other end of the phone was absolute. The staggering weight of the truth paralyzed her. "I cancelled the auto draft," I concluded softly. "Good luck." I pressed the end button and dropped the phone back into my clutch. 1 week later, the afternoon sun was streaming brilliantly through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my home office. Victor was currently facing multiple counts of federal wire fraud, aggravated identity theft, and corporate embezzlement. He was currently relying on an overworked public defender and living out of a cheap, neon-lit roadside motel on the outskirts of the city. I walked back to the window, watching the afternoon light reflect off the surface of the pool. I owned this house, free and clear. I owned my restructuring firm, and now I owned the corporate empire Victor had used to falsely inflate his fragile, pathetic ego. He didn't realize that while he was busy playing king, I had already bought the kingdom. The most profound lesson from these stories of betrayal is that